All right, yeah. So this is the story of how I dropped out of high school at 16 years old. I just finished sophomore year at the time, and I remember I was so fed up with doing homework. I went home and banged my fucking fist on the table so often because I hated doing math homework and I would get stuck on these calculus problems. And I was sick of it. At the time, I made a decision I'm gonna leave high school. And so when I made that decision finally, it was literally hours and hours of walking back and forth in my room, weighing the pros and cons in my head, and just doing all these different things, and just trying to make this decision of if I should leave high school or not. And in the end, my decision was I want to leave. I walked into my principal's office, and I remember walking into the school like I always do, and I'm just like sweating a little bit. And I look around and there's not too many kids around me at the time because this was when school had just ended and they were kind of doing the prep for the next year. And so I was breathing. I was by myself. My dad was waiting in the parking lot, and I walked in the principal's office and I told him, I'm like, I don't want to come back next year. I want to drop out of high school. And he was really, really shocked, obviously. I went to a pretty good high school, and the dropout rate was like less than I don't think there were dropouts, really. And so he was shocked, and he's like, okay, talk to your counselor. Eventually, that's what he said. My counselor was there at the time, and she brought me to the counselor room, and we talked for like 20 minutes in this fluorescent light, like small little room, super awkward, uncomfortable, one-on-one. She just gave me like 20-30 reasons of why dropping out was a really, really bad idea, essentially. And she went over everything, like, you should always have a backup with a high school diploma or a GED, even if you're not gonna go to high school, or get a college diploma. You can always come back and do business at another time. You're gonna lose a lot of friends. You have to really think if this is a good decision. Just because you're making money now with your business doesn't mean it's always gonna last. But at this time, I've probably spent over 50 hours thinking about this decision. And so my mind was made. Every scenario she talked about, I've already ran through my head thousands of times. And so I told her, I'm like, I really appreciate this, but my mind is made and I'm going to drop out. And she said, I can't stop you. And we got up and we went back to the principal's office, walked down this little hallway, and I looked at him and I said, I'm trying to do this for real. Like, I'm trying to drop out. And he took a deep breath and he was like, all right, here's how it goes. There's 3 papers you need to sign. If you've really thought about this decision and you want to do it, sign these papers. And so I signed the first paper. It was like a big packet, just flip through, sign. Big packet, flip through, sign. Third one, big packet, flip through, sign. There's a second signature that's required from my dad. So called my dad. He's in the parking lot. He was already aware that I was doing this, and so he came in and signed it. And I took these 3 packets of paper and I handed it to my principal. And I said goodbye. And I left my high school that day, and I never went back. And that was the day I left the modern compulsory education system. And that day was probably that day probably had the single largest impact on the trajectory of my life to this day. On my business, on my personal life, on my development as a man, the biggest single day was that day when I decided to drop out of high school. And so this video isn't so much about the pros and cons or whatever like that. Like, it's not talking about whether you should or whether you shouldn't. Like, this is not any of that. More so just my experience of how it was, why I did it, and if you were planning on doing it, or if you're in high school right now and you're watching, or if you're just interested, like, what kind of to expect. The first thing is it's a really dark path. It's a really dark path, and it's really lonely because you'll essentially lose all of your friends, right? All of your high school friends. No, I've known a lot of my high school friends for like 10 years plus, right? And from elementary school to high school. And kind of when you leave high school, you're not with them for 8 hours a day. You just stop talking to them over time. And so about 95% of my friends gone. Never spoke to them again. Still haven't spoken to them to this day. And maybe 5% of them I'm really close to. I still hung out with them sometimes, but like we didn't have that much in common anymore, and our interests were getting more and more split as I went down this path. And so I really didn't have a lot of friends for like 2 years. Like for 2 years after I dropped out, like 16 years old to 18 years old, I really just didn't have that many friends. And so it was really lonely. And it's really, the reason I say it's dark is because I remember waking up a few weeks after I made this decision, and for the past few weeks, it was summer when this happened, right? This school just ended, it was summer break, and everyone was doing all these crazy things, and I just sat in my room and I worked from when I woke up to when it got dark, and I would do that again over and over and over again until summer ended and the next school year started and everyone went back to school, and I was just in my room working. And for like 10 to 12 hours a day, I was just in my room looking at a screen, and so I was really depressed. This was not a healthy lifestyle, but at the time that was kind of what was required for my building phase. I was just working as much as I could, and I had no one really to talk to. Anyone in my circle thought this was a stupid idea. My parents, teachers, friends, even one of my mentors at the time was like telling me like, you probably should not be doing this. And so it's really lonely, and it's really, really dark in that sense when you walk your own path. The other thing is you won't feel normal when you drop out, and you won't feel normal for a long time afterwards. And honestly, I haven't felt normal until very recently, because you don't fit in with any kids your age, obviously, and there's no one you can find that is on the same path as you. There's nobody. The only people I had at the time was really YouTube. The people I would watch on YouTube, and maybe some of them had a similar story, or there were entrepreneurs I looked up to and I could relate to them on some sense of not feeling understood. But I just never felt normal, and I never felt like I fitted in with anybody. So that was really hard. But like I said, single best decision I've ever made, because that muscle of walking your own path, that uncomfort is what is directly translated into anything good that's happened in my life today. Because all good paths are hard paths, that are paths that you usually have to walk alone, especially in business. And so that taught me really early on to endure, the lonely path when it does occur. The other thing people always ask me is like, how did your parents react? How did your friends react? Well, first of all, I didn't tell a lot of people. I really only told people who I was really close with at the time. I told my dad because he was chill. At the time, I was 16, so I was doing e-commerce. My bank account was running through him because I wasn't old enough to open my own bank account. And so he saw how much money I was making. I was doing all right for myself, and so he was like, at the time, like, all right, you're making enough money to like live on your own. Like, I'll let you do this. But my mom would not have like been okay with it at all, and I actually didn't even tell her that I dropped out of high school until like 2 years later. So she didn't know, because this is the big thing, right? And I would say this especially if you have parents who don't want you to drop out, but maybe one of them is okay with it. Just don't tell the other one. Like, and that's easy to say, but like, just don't tell anyone who doesn't need to know, because all they're going to do is add additional stress and doubt into your life, which you don't need, especially when you're already making such a hard decision that nobody thinks is a good idea. The only person who thinks it's a good idea needs to be you, because you're the only one who can have this burning intuition inside to know that you have to drop out. It's not a should I drop out? Oh hey, I'm thinking of dropping out. Do you think I should? If anyone asks me that, I always tell them just don't do it, because you don't know that you want to. You don't have to. You don't have to drop out. When I dropped out, I had to drop out. I literally could not spend more time in school. I had to drop out. That's the level I got to, and that's why I did it. And so also, I wouldn't advise anyone to drop out unless they have something going for themselves already, like a business of some sort. You're making enough money. I would really, really advise that. The other thing that's worth noting is, from the ages of 16 to 18, I was very, very depressed, because the lifestyle I had was very unhealthy. Like, in retrospect, but in the moment, you don't really know why you're depressed. You're just like, oh, maybe because I'm young, maybe it's because I'm doing all this shit. There's all these sorts of doubts. You doubt yourself in every way imaginable, and I was just super depressed. And main reason for that, looking back, I was sitting in a room for 10 to 12 hours a day, but it's really, really hard to feel really isolated for like 2 years, especially when you're so young and all of your friends are having so much fun and doing all these things, and you look and you feel FOMO on all these different trips and parties and prom and all of this stuff, and you're sitting at home and you don't have much to show for it. So that's a harrowing thought. It was, just looking back, I remember that wasn't easy. What did my friends think? This is my friends. They were like, "What? You're dropping out?" Ask a few questions. That's it. They don't care, bro. This is the big thing. Nobody cares about your life that much. Really, nobody cares. It's you. You are the only person who can make decisions for your life, because the issue of staying in high school just because your friends want you there, or your parents want you there, or your teachers think you should, or your mentors, or whatever. They're just trying to do what's best for you, but they don't actually care about your life that much. You are the only person who actually deals with the consequences of the decisions you make in your life. And so, my friends, they don't give a fuck, dude. They're still gonna have a test on Monday. They're still gonna have this to do and their responsibilities. And they still have their own complex life to deal with. They don't have time or bandwidth to think about your life. They don't actually care. So, friends didn't really give a shit. If I was 16 again, what I would tell myself is, do it, because I didn't regret a thing. But I would say, try to be a little happier while you did it, because those were dark times. Those were not happy times. I don't remember that many happy memories during that period. At certain points, it got really bad, and I was considering giving up. Like, not even just business, but like everything, just giving up. And it never should have gotten to that point. It is never that serious. It never was that serious. It's just a decision it's just a life path decision. It's not anything serious. Entrepreneurship shouldn't be something that's so life consuming to the point where you're considering giving it all up. You know what I mean? Like, nothing is that serious. Nothing is worth your sanity. So that's what I would tell myself, is like, keep going hard, but chill in your internal mind a little bit. Like, have some more peace. The last part of this story, which I guess I'll end with, is now everyone who used to be in my high school, they look at my Instagram or whatever, my life, and they're always like, "Wow, man, you live a sick life," or I've heard that multiple times, but the reward is worth it. The reward is definitely worth it. It's not easy in the moment, but the reward is everything. It's literally everything. It's everything I'm able to do in my life today is because of that decision I made. And so I would say, make the decision that you need to make, whether it's dropping out of high school, whether it's dropping out of college, whether it's leaving that job, whether it's doing whatever, but intuitively what's the correct decision and what's going to bring you long-term freedom and happiness. Don't let the pressure of outside noise influence that decision. Don't let your friends influence that decision. Don't let your teachers, mentors, parents influence that decision. That's your decision and yours only. Everyone else around you will either die or not care about your decision, and they won't be impacted by it. They're not the ones who have to live with the consequences for 24 hours a day for the rest of your life. So I would say, make that decision. So yeah, this is my first kind of like YouTube video in this style, just kind of talking about stuff I've done in my life and also learnings and whatever. But I'll probably be making more videos like this, so it's just interesting. I'll be posting more. Peace.